Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you something super cool. Let's get started. So let me show you what I've built. Let me just quickly zoom in so you guys can see which country would you like to travel to. I'm just going to type in India. It's a simple travel planning application, but there is some super cool things about it, okay, according to me. Right? So how many days do you want to spend in Jaipur? Let's say 4 days. What's the budget for the trip? I'm just going to write 3,000. This is in USD, right? So again, if you want to spend $3,000 4 days trip, I don't think that's something people are going to, but like just for random application. And then it's going to start fetching an itinerary trip and showcase that on the left. As you can see, it did not come in the agent, but it came on the left hand side of this beautiful place that we have created. That's what we want to talk about today, right? So again, you see the itinerary, you see the hotels and flights, you see the links there, you see the cost of the hotel, and also see this in tabs format. And then there is this one video that is getting rendered about Jaipur or something like that. What I just showed you is a new way to look at how you use Voiceflow to build agents. I'm talking about building agents from a perspective of building complete applications. This looks like a web application. Like you literally just have an interface with chat, but you also have buttons. You have your normal software elements here. They look pretty good. There's decent elements of design available, right? And there's a lot to be there's a lot to go off from right here. We are going to work on building this web application in a format that can help you take your agents from just chat agents to complete full-blown web applications with an interface with buttons, charts, everything. If you're new to the channel, I'm Akshat Bahety and help you build AI stuff across multiple different applications. First things first, when we come to Voiceflow, I'm just going to walk you through what the agent looks like. I'm just going to tell you how this agent looks and then focus on the core parts which are going to help us actually build this, right? So first steps first, very simply, which country would you like to travel? I simply capture the response. Right. So the first thing that we want to do is, based on the country that the user is inputting, we want to get 3 cities that are very popular in that. So that is pretty simple to do. I have a simple prompt step here, which you can get. Go to a talk step, get the prompt thing, and you can just drag and drop there. Right. Now I'm just going to select this and actually show you how the prompt looks. So we're going to city extractor. I have a very simple prompt, right? Again, list down top 3 tourist cities present in the following country. I extracted the top 3 tourist cities from the country and reply in the following JSON format. One thing that I've started doing with the prompt step, which actually helps out a lot, is like you have a conversation pair. Now this is a fairly simple one. Let me just show you how this works. So let's say if I put like another country, let's say put in USA, and then you should technically be able to see like 3 cities which are entered in this format: New York, Las Vegas, San Francisco. Let me just move myself so you can see actually how does the output look like. Now, pretty simple prompt, because our goal is to just get a JSON with 3 cities which are super popular in that particular country, right? So once that is done, we can move on to the next step, which is where the magic starts happening. The prompt input gets stored in city JSON. We have this extension, and then we have the action body, which is this particular variable input here, and the path, very simply, this is something that I'll come to in a second. Okay, so if you are using custom extensions for the first time, let me show you the documentation. Custom extensions are like this, and on the left hand side, these are all rendered using custom extensions. We have created a simple piece of code which gets rendered in a specific format within the agent and outside the agent. You can also see the documentation available here. I'll be linking this particular link below. This is the official Voiceflow documentation, where you can see how they are building a form within the agent and render something else. The same way that we are rendering buttons, they were able to render a form. So let's try to utilize the same logic and implement our extensions. Now, I know a lot of you who are watching the videos don't actually know how to code, or mostly prefer to use no-code tools. So we're going to just use GPT, our best friend, to try to do this. So let's bring this thing here. The first thing that I'm going to start with is GPT-4o is not super great at this, but again, you can surely get started with that. So let's actually try to just use it with GPT-4o. I prefer to use O1 for anything a bit more complex. So we're going to take this extension code, just copy this code, right? And then we're going to ask it to create a custom extension code for Voiceflow, which can take input as 3 cities and render it in a button format. Here, and I'm going to render input as 3 cities in a JSON format. And also, one more thing that I'm going to do is showcase how the JSON looks. So just go here quickly. We are just going to text this our prompt and get a city. So whenever you want the input to be rendered, you want it to be rendered in a specific format. So again, come back to ChatGPT with JSON file, render it in a button format, and here is the example. So again, here is an example of how to actually create an extension. Now paste this whole extension here and then voila, just try to see what ChatGPT actually comes with. The best part is because I understand how this code is working now, I can explain what are the things that you have to look at. But again, this is pretty good place to get started because very simply, this is super simple in the way that you can just get started with this stuff. Now, one thing that I can always see is GPT-4 is not super great at solving these. So if you're using Claude or something else, might work. But again, very simply, if I just zoom in, it's not following the styling and everything. It's creating something by itself right now. Again, I don't want that, right? Again, very simply, I want you to focus on using the same format as done in the code, which is as inner HTML. Right, one thing, and let me quickly show you also how this particular function looks like, is that they're using something called form container.inner HTML. Now again, if you've not used HTML and if you've not coded, this might seem a bit tricky, but bear with me. Let me also quickly show you how does my code look like, so you can get an idea of what we are trying to achieve. So if we come and see here, this is the city selector extension. Right now, again, if you have not created the extension before, you don't have to worry. Then there is a part called type as a response, right? Let me quickly zoom in so you can see, just focus on that particular part. Type as a response, which is, the way I want the extension to respond. Then we have this particular thing called trace type and trace payload name. This is something you have to be super careful of when you're building your agent, because this is the same name you're going to use in Voiceflow. When Voiceflow triggers that custom action, it's going to try to find this particular trace. Very simply, all of this is code generated by ChatGPT. Here we take the data that is coming from Voiceflow and give it to our agent and simply use a basic style function to render this. And you can see we are using inner HTML, and this is coded by ChatGPT because it's like a lot of styling. Finally, we just render the cards below. Now, do you have to worry about any of this? Not at all. If I start showing you this like a 700 line file, you might get a bit scared. Let's focus on this, and you can see it has got us all the options. So city button extension with the name city buttons, type response, match trace, and all of those things. Same thing. Perfect. So given now that we have this extension, let's try to test it out, right? So I'm going to copy this code and come back to VS Code and create a new file. In this new file, I want to render a simple HTML page so that we can render our agent out. I'm going to come back to my Voiceflow and zoom out so you can see this. So now to integrate the extension, I'm just going to come back to Voiceflow, take this particular agent, copy this code and paste this here. Now again, let me quickly just save the file. Perfect. We have got our agent. So given that we have generated the code, let's start adding this thing, right? First things first, we need to copy and paste the code, which I've already done here. Very simply take the code that ChatGPT has generated and just paste it here, right? Another thing that you have to do is, if you have not done, is that because you have to allow HTML to be rendered within the agent, you have to allow dangerous HTML to be true. Auto start is something that you can choose if you want there or not. Another option you want to have is assistant. You have to mention extensions. You have to mention assistant, and within those curly braces, you will have extensions. Now, once this is done, it should be able to render everything, right? So again, this is pretty simple. I'll explain how the payload and everything works in a second, but let's try to test this. Which country would you like to travel to? And then let's see what we get. Please select a city to travel. We have got 3 cities. Now again, is the styling horrible? 110% yes. But given that we did not give any instructions on how to render a proper style or what do we want, it is completely fine. This is literally step 1. After this, it's just like, you can just simply go and say what kind of style you want. You want to change the style in any format, you can go ahead and do that. Another thing that I want to show you is, given when you click the button, so if I click something here, something should happen. Something should go back to Voiceflow. Right now, it is not connected. That's why it's fine that it does not show up anything. But for that, we need to see this particular thing here specifically, right? We are typing complete, and then there is another option called payload. Let me zoom in so I can explain. This piece of code, which is window.voiceflow.chat.interact, sending something on our behalf back to the agent, right? So let's see how does that look, right? Let's come back to our agent here. Very simply, come back to home, right? And then I can show you a transcript. Let me show you a transcript so you can see how did this response come back. You can see there is just a response complete being mentioned once I click the button. So it came as please select a city travel to. Obviously, I can't see what was rendered on the agent, and then I can see the complete being typed. What I have to do here is I want to do something else. I want to actually get the data back, right? So selected city is going to be like, button.getAttribute, which is the data city. I'm going to use development function. I'm going to select a JavaScript option here, right, and connect these two things, right? Let me just move other blocks around so we don't get distracted and just can focus on this particular part. So on this particular JavaScript function, what I'm going to do is very simply, I have a variable called city name is equal to last event dot payload. Okay, I'm just going to write last event dot payload, and technically now I want to just to test this out, I want to say just randomly put out the city name. In this format, I should be able to get the city name or at least an object of what I should be getting. Let me publish this. In a second, we'll be able to see how does this actually come up in the chart. So it will probably take a couple of seconds. Perfect. Let's see. We're going to come here. Which country would you like to go to? India. Please select the city. Travel to Mumbai. Yeah. It's going to render an object because it's a JSON object, right? It does not render the name, it is rendering the JSON object out there. And that's something that we don't want. We want the city itself. So let's see how we can fetch that. For that, we need to do a very small tweak. We just come here and select selected city. And that is based on this particular code that we're using. So you see payload and then selected city is there. If I just write payload, it just gives it the JSON, which is literally the same thing. But I am now obviously putting selected city. Technically, we should be getting a particular string, and that's what we were looking for, right? And once I explain you the whole workflow on the way that I built this particular assistant, I'll show you how all those things work and how we're going to take them forward. Another thing to mention is whenever you want to render something within the chart, you have to use type response. The type of the extension will be response, and the other type is called effect, which is something we are rendering outside. So anything that is getting rendered outside will be effect. But let's come to that in a second. Let's test this thing out. Hopefully it should work this time. Let's put India, and then technically we should be able to click and get the same city name back. Mumbai, yes, perfectly. So again, we are able to get the city name. Obviously the chart ends because I have not connected it anywhere else. But that's literally how you get something within the agent getting built. You can build patterns, you can build beautiful styles. The same logic is utilized to build this particular thing also. Now let me quickly walk you through the next steps that I had, right? So how many days you want to spend in Jaipur, and here in the template, I just ask that, get the number of days. Then I extract that so that in case someone, what's your budget for the trip, I take that and extract that particular thing also. As you can see, we take all of these details, and then I'm running then a very simple Perplexity API call. That means it sends my data to Perplexity to get us an itinerary. And I can show you the conversation flow that we created for that, but it's pretty extensive. Just to show you the Perplexity API that we are using and how I rendered this, very simply, we had this whole conversation created. It's the same message pair format that we used in the prompt, and we're using the Perplexity. I'm not going to explain how the Perplexity API works. I'm just going to link a video that you can see. You can see how we have created a conversation where we take all of this information and then send it back to AI to fetch us the options based on that. And now one thing that I want to mention is that in the last option, I've given the assistant to respond with a particular JSON, right? Because we want to render the hotel flight options in a specific format. So we have also asked Perplexity API to render it in the same format. You can see we have the hotel name, description, hotel link, and the cost of the hotel. The same format happens for all the other things also. I have the same thing built here again, and then I'm just taking the details from the JSON. If you have not used the API step before, I will link a video where you can see how to use the API step in Voiceflow. Coming to the next thing, very simply, we take all the details which are coming from Perplexity and putting this here. Now coming to the next step, we set all the details to our variable and then do a simple call to Pixabay, which is like this website which you can find, which is like free images and stuff and videos and stuff. So you can use the API from there, and we are just doing that particular call. Then we take all of that data and create our final JSON. This is something that I want to show you. Same logic, message pair prompt, and we have created a complete JSON format of how we want it to be rendered, because this particular JSON is needed for me to run my next extension. Perfect. Let's start by creating a simple extension for itinerary. Now, first steps, very simply, I've just rendered a particular JSON. So you can see this is the JSON that is getting rendered from our prompt. I'm just going to take this, do the same thing here again, create a new extension itinerary which can take the following JSON and create an extension which gets rendered outside the agent in a beautiful card style format. So let me just paste the agent here again in the beautiful card style format, and let me paste the JSON here and use the effect option Another thing that I'm going to do is, because AI does not actually has any information about this, what we can do is we can come back to this chat extension demo, go to extensions.js. They have a lot of extensions here, and take the effect confetti, this particular extension. I'm going to take this and give this as an example. So again, we just take this details and then paste them here and ask it to create it in one shot in a new canvas. This is something I started doing now because it always takes a lot of time to create something. But let's see what it comes with. Very simply, if you have started seeing, it has started creating an element and all of those things. Also loop through the days for each card to be created and XYZ. But this is not exactly how it will work, right? And that's where you can see there is a problem. So if I could just give it the code that I have already created, it would be super simple and super fast. Let me show you how this will actually have to be done. First things first, we technically want something like this, but it does not need to be exactly in the same format. We need to render these elements outside the agent, so we need to create a DOM. What I'm going to do is, because to keep prompting, it took me like, roughly, I'll be honest, like it took me 4 hours, 5 hours to build this whole thing, right? Again, just to get the design, everything, right? I'm not going to waste it because all of these things are going to be linked below. But very simply, I'm just going to copy and paste this whole extension, which we already created. I will explain you how this extension works, but I'm just going to give this as an example. Here is an example of the extension that we create. Right, it's doing some things well, like inner HTML and all of those things are required, but we also need an element outside this to be rendered, right? You can see it starts changing the code by a lot, adding images and stuff. One major thing that is missing is that I will have to explain this from my code. So this is the code we are using to create the main extension. In this, you have to create a particular left panel. We have the left panel that you can see here. Let me just quickly switch. You can see this left panel, and in this I have a hotel flight container. We have to create something like this, an ID which can hold the content outside the extension, because the way extension works is it takes the data here and then is going to use it to render it outside the agent, right? So again, that's how it technically works, right? So again, 110% means I have taken like 4.5 hours. So obviously you are not going to watch a 4.5 hour video. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give the code to AI and hopefully create something similar with that. It has come back with something. Let's try to understand this. So it creates an element and kind of loop through days and creates cards. Kind of should work. The only thing is I'm worried about is it's still creating a div element and not rendering something outside. So let's see how this logic, this particular thing looks. But yes. Now again, I'm trying to render this. I'm 10%. There's going to be a lot of errors like this. Like very simply through an error, cannot set the properties of null, setting in HTML. Right, so if you come here, very simply, everything is getting rendered on the button side and everything. But here, dot inner HTML, there will be some issues. So let me show you how the code looks, right, for this particular thing from an itinerary perspective. Let me bring you to itinerary, ext. Yep. This is the official code on how I created this. It took a decent amount of time. Let me show this to you. You have the trace.payload, the name of the thing, the days, and the payload. That is the same prompt we are using. Finally, we have this render itinerary in the current mode. I'll show you this function also. It's simple. Then we have the video inner HTML where you have the video being loaded and everything else. On the render itinerary, because it's being rendered for multiple days, there is a whole function render itinerary, which is completely done by AI, but it takes a lot more prompts for us to create. Select the days and then check if there are no days, then enter this particular thing. But there is also an option to select between tabs and not between tabs. If you come back here, there is an option here, vertical and tabs, and you can get rid of that if you want to. After that, it runs this particular small function. This is for running that function for every day and for index. It starts creating the options and then simply runs this also for each and then creates sections hidden by default in tab mode. So again, pretty simple, like it just runs the function for the for each loop and keeps creating that. One thing that I have to tell you is when you actually try to build these extensions, it takes a ton of time. So again, we can still build this with ChatGPT, and I've built this whole thing with ChatGPT. The only thing is it will take us a lot of time. So what I did is very simply, I did some custom code written by myself before for another agent. So I gave it the same chart, same response, and similar we were building with the left panel and gave that as an input. So if I start doing that, the person could start building. It will take us a couple of prompts to be able to do that. To build something simply, change the type to effect, and render all the things, which can completely be built by AI. The only thing that I will tell you, if you want this particular template and the code and everything else, the links will be in the description. And then with anything else, please like, share, and subscribe to this video. It really helps me out a lot and would really mean a lot to me if you can, like, just hit that subscribe button and